Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Living by Design. And we have a special guest today. The stars have aligned for this to happen now because we were supposed to do an interview a couple weeks ago. But I have the Leah Steele, and I'm going to have Leah go on and introduce who she is. So, how are you doing, Leah?
Good, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Well, up until recently, I would have said I'm Leah Steele, aka the Wealth Witch, but as you know, I have made a decision this year in my ninth year of my 9-year numerological cycle to retire the Wealth Witch brand, which I'm very excited about. So we can talk maybe a little bit about that later, but I'm a holistic wealth strategist. And I help people deconstruct programming and conditioning around money, wealth, and abundance. And that programming and conditioning not only being this lifetime, but I do a lot of ancestral and generational work to help deconstruct the programming and conditioning that we've been carrying in our genetic memory that impacts our ability to access our infinite potential and live the wildly abundant lives that we desire to live. So that's a little bit about me, but I have a emotional clearing modality that I founded called Emotional Resonance Clearing that I use in my work that clears stuck and stagnant emotional pathology from the organs and meridian systems of the body. So I take a very holistic approach to wealth work. It's not just mindset. I, look at it from a neuroscience perspective, from a physical body perspective, from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, as well as a mindset perspective. So thanks for having me.
And I'm so honored to have you. I know we crossed paths back, I want to say it was like 2018 on Instagram. And then I was in your mastermind. I've done some of your activations, and I've just been immersed in your work and in your world, in Leah's world, as we call it. And what I want to know, and I want everybody to, so they can get a clear picture of how you, and I know we can't even go all the way into it, but what was the catalyst of your transformation to get you here and to get to Bali?
Yeah. So how to make this as concise as possible. I guess I'd say that, I've always been very, very financially motivated my whole entire life. I was raised by a single mom who was kind of a forever student. So she was always in a master's program and working 1 or 2 jobs, like to put food on the table, but really always just wanting to better herself for me to provide a better life. And so, that was what my modeling was as a young child. And so I wanted to start making money as soon as possible. So I had my first job at 13. At 19, I left my hometown, moved to New York City, and kind of started my professional career, of which I've had many. I've worked in entertainment marketing and sports marketing and addiction treatment, which is my family business. But I would say that, when I sort of had my spiritual reawakening, I had very successful addiction treatment businesses, actually, that were my own. But I wasn't doing the work that I was meant to do in the world. And I was actually quite miserable at the time. And so had my spiritual reawakening, really started tapping back into just a lot of the ancestral magic that I carry through all my lineages. I'm a multiracial woman, and just have this incredible mixing pot of magical influences from all sides of my family. So as I started really diving into that, my ancestors started speaking to me and they were like, you are not doing what you were meant to be doing right now. And I was in a lot of resistance to that, but ultimately ended up manifesting the implosion of my very successful businesses, lost $3 million, ended up $1 million in debt, lost a house, lost a car, was 3 hours away from being homeless with my children. So it was definitely a financial rock bottom, but it was the biggest blessing that has ever happened to me in my life. And in that moment, as everything kind of got stripped away, I was getting all of these job offers to go into really good, amazing job offers to go work for friends of mine that had other addiction treatment programs. And I just every time I would feel into it, it would feel like my soul was dying. And I was like, no, I can't. And I had already started my coaching business on the side. I was already I was moonlighting in my coaching business. And I was just like, nope, I have to go all in on this. This is what I'm meant to be doing. And So I did. And I had no idea where the money was going to come from. And I was extremely blessed. My business has been extremely, extremely successful and became successful very, very quickly. But, I mean, for me, there was no other option. I fully energetically backed myself in my decision. And I was like, look, failure isn't an option. So I'm just going to do this damn thing. And yeah, so that's kind of the catalyst that got me here. But ultimately, like my life, and I was living in Salt Lake City at the time, my life in Salt Lake City fell apart when the businesses fell apart. And you really find out who your real friends are when you lose all your money, and especially if you've been, wealthy. And so, yeah, that became very apparent. And I was on the verge of getting a divorce. And my husband and I decided that we would leave Salt Lake City and kind of give it one last go to see if we could save our marriage. And I also just really didn't want my kids growing up in the United States solely. And I wanted to give them an experience of being global citizens. And so we decided to leave the United States for a year. And I had to be in Australia twice that upcoming year for work trainings and for practitioner training, actually. And so we chose Bali and we've been here ever since.
Yeah,
that was 2018.
It was like, that so resonated with me. And actually, like, because I know you told me before that you were born in Detroit, right?
Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids. Okay,
Michigan.
Grand Rapids.
My family is, so, Alicia Baker is my cousin.
Yes.
So our family is from like primarily Grand Rapids and Detroit. So yeah.
And then you moved to Salt Lake. Like Salt Lake is
Idaho. My mom moved to Idaho. Yeah. So I grew up in southern Idaho and Utah.
Okay, and then Utah. And how was that? Okay, I know that you were in that's one thing I love about you. Like you being that, I know, because I know you're a Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is just the esoteric knowledge, the sciences, all the things. Living in Utah, did you feel really constricted to expand also too, with just being that you were, I mean, Utah, Salt Lake City is known for the Mormons and everything. And and it's very what is it? Super, super, super ultra conservative. So did you feel like you could be your ultimate self or no, really living there?
Well, I would say no growing up, because the other thing is that, Salt Lake City, Utah is a very diverse place now. But when I was growing up, I was the only brown kid in my school. You know what I mean? Like elementary school, I was the only brown person there. And then went to junior high, and there were a couple of kids whose dad was teaching at the University of Utah who were African, and me.
Okay.
And then went to high school, and then there were a bunch of Polynesian people actually at my high school, but still just really the minority. So I was always different. And I really struggled growing up because of that. Like I was teased a lot. I didn't have a lot of friends. I read at recess. I was total like nerd dork person all through. Like high school changed a little bit, because once you get to high school and the boys realize like they don't want the same thing, they want something diverse. So then I became popular once I hit high school. But yeah, so it was very hard growing up in Salt Lake City. And it is very oppressive. And, for me, it's like, I've always been into all things magical and witchy, like my whole entire life. And the esoteric, I've been obsessed with Egypt, and ancient Egyptian magic since, I think I was like 8 or 9 years old. Okay. And so that was all the stuff that I always studied, like in my own time and in privacy. And in fact, that's how I started this coaching business. Was I simply just wanted to create a space for women to explore their individual and unique spirituality, no matter what that was, with nothing being taboo. And, for me, because when my spiritual reawakening happened, I had so many different ancestors speaking to me from so many different lineages. I was exploring all kinds of things, from African Voodoo to Ifa to, Celtic magic and ritual. And so I started creating these spaces and these circles where women could come together and explore whatever it was that was calling to them. So that's how I actually even started my coaching business. And it was originally, for the first, year and a half, it was all about exploring spirituality and stepping into purpose. And I do think that a lot of that is because I grew up in an extremely religiously oppressive culture, growing up in Utah, for sure.
And also that would also kind of push you to do your own self-discovery to really find out what your truth is. Did you have like teachers back then along the way before when you right before you stepped into, let's see, did you ever have like, did you have teachers that helped you really hone on your gifts, or a lot of your stuff just started to expand, like your field, from you doing all this work?
Yeah, I mean, a combination, right? So, I have always been fascinated with tarot. And so I learned that was probably one of the first things that I started doing, is going to
Okay.
see tarot readers and then learning how to read myself.
Mm.
And I had a really, really incredible teacher named Cheryl Forrester, who, was my first kind of like official tarot teacher. And we had some really fascinating like lineage in common, in that we were both descendants of Matilda Flanders, who was William the Conqueror's wife. So we were direct descendants, and we kind of discovered that, and like grew, like created this kind of spiritual connection through that. And so that really got me very, very interested in my lineage.
Okay.
And in fact, like one of the first tarot readings that I went to, and this was really even prior to my spiritual reawakening happening, my grandfather came into that reading, and he had recently passed, like within the previous 4 months, he had passed away.
Okay.
And he came into that reading and told that reader that I needed to start exploring my ancestry. And so I did. And I went down this rabbit hole of, tracing my familial lines back as far as I could trace them. And that took me to so many different places. But I guess it's also important to say that my mother is a highly spiritual, non-religious woman. So I grew up in a house where my mom was constantly exploring all different types of theology and spiritual practices. And I would say that if she was, probably mostly like Zen Buddhist, but I was always exposed to all different types of spirituality growing up. And so I had that like really incredible like model in her of just being open to everything. But so, I would say like Cheryl Forrester definitely was really, really impactful in my journey. Malidoma Somé, who recently passed away, who is was an elder of the Dagara tribe in Africa, was definitely a mentor of mine, and somebody that was very, very instrumental in me being where I am right now. And in fact, like I had this incredible reading with him where he threw the bones for me, and I just listened to it again like 2 months ago. And in the reading, like he said at the end, the next time we'll meet will be at the next like transition place in your journey, and what's coming for you in that place. He was like, something so great's coming for you that you can't even imagine. And this was right after my businesses had collapsed. I had this reading with him. And then he said, and then we'll meet again. And it'll be at a time when, you're actually going to step into your greater purpose and why you're here on this planet. And he died. And I was always like, oh, but then like a month ago, you've got to listen to that reading. You've got to listen to that reading. You've got to listen to that reading. So I go and I listen to it, and it literally was like an entirely new reading, and he was speaking to me right then. And then like, it was crazy because like he was with me and he was like, no, this is when we meet again. Like we meet again now. So yeah, I've been really blessed to have people along the way that have guided me. And I have incredible mentors in business and in spirituality. And there's so many people that I could name that have been influential, but I do think that just staying on my path of exploration also helps me to just continue to expand, because I'm so curious, and I'm like, I just want to know all the things about all the things.
Yes.
So,
and you know what? It also helps that you had that foundation. For me, I grew up Roman Catholic, but at the same time, I was always curious as a child. And I just remember sitting in church and I was like, I reincarnated for this bullshit, like sitting in the Catholic church, like what is this? And I just remember as a small child, I was just digging and wanting to know more. And then I would always be like, why do I know that? What is this? And everything. But that really helps that you had that fluidness to be able to explore, because some of these people that are probably listening to this now, they're told that stuff's bad, you shouldn't do this. And so there's that bit of shame that a lot of women or men or whatever who are wanting to step into this hold, which can hold you back when you're doing, just doing that ancestral and generational healing. The shame from your family being like, you should follow it this way. But I think this is a really good time to really segment into how you have gone now from letting go the wealth witch name. Like, I want everybody to hear like how you got it, because that's how I knew you, the wealth witch. But now, like, you're releasing that, and there's like, I see so much coming for you in that. Like when early this year, and I was like, where's Leah? I haven't seen her. Like, you were kind of like, people like they're popping up in your field, and like for a while I was like, where's Leah? She hasn't come down my timeline in a while. Like, where did she go? What is going on? And I was like, yeah, some rebirth's happening. That's what it is. A rebirth is happening, and I'm always here for the rebirth. But I want to dive into that as far as like, who gave you the wealth witch name, and what is this looking like right now on this rebirth? And I know this is about to open up a can of worms on some other things that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. So one of my mentors is a man named Dane Thomas, who founded and created the Spiral, which is an emotional clearing modality. He's an Australian guy, wealth wizard, if you will. But so he always would give me these nicknames. So he would, like, every time he would see me, he, like, for a long time, it was like the Queen of America, because it was like this whole Australian group of people, right? Or the Queen Witch of Australia, or the Queen Witch of America, or the Priestess of Profit. Like, he had all these little nicknames that he would always call me. And so it sort of got everyone in that community, like, calling me all these random nicknames. But I had this one client that would, on all of my live streams, she would put these nicknames, like, as I was saying things, she would put these nicknames in. And one of the ones that she put in was the Wealth Witch. And for whatever reason, on that live stream, like, and this was back in the days when we would have like 1,500 people on a live stream, right? Like, not like the 3 we get now, but this was like, and so all of a sudden on that live stream, like, everyone's like, the Wealth Witch, the Wealth Witch, the Wealth Witch. And it just kind of carried on. So then, every time I would show up online, people would be commenting the Wealth Witch. And I didn't actually even want it. Like, it wasn't something where I was like, oh, I want this, but people just started calling me that. And so then when I got ready to launch my podcast, I was like, what the hell? We might as well just, it's catchy. Like, it's obviously stuck. It's one of those things, like, it took on a life of its own. And so when I launched the podcast, I launched the Wealth Witch podcast, and that kind of solidified the brand. And it's really served me well. It's been an incredibly, it's been an epic journey, and, but, as I said a couple of months ago when I announced, or I guess it's only been a month now, it feels like so long ago that I announced this, because I'm like, it's been coming. In February, I went on a trip to Europe with a friend. And while we were, we're sitting there, like, I hadn't been off the island because of the pandemic in 2 years. So I'm finally on a plane. We're sitting in business class, we're drinking our champagne, and she just turns and looks at me and she's like, it's time for you to let go of the Wealth Witch brand. She's like, it's holding you back. And I had so much resistance. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I have put so much into this brand. I have, like, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the hours, the brand recognition, I had all these reasons why, but I should have known at how great my resistance was, that she was absolutely speaking the truth. And so I think it planted this little seed with me. And, this year has been a year of endings. Like, I got divorced. I moved out of, like, what was my dream villa here in Bali. I have, like, severed business relationships, a few friendships. Like, it's been that, like, very typical 9-year where, like, everything's ending, right? So that we can step into the new beginnings. And, a month ago, I was like, maybe 6 weeks ago, I was like, you know what? It is time. it's time. Like, it's time for me to set this down. It's not serving me any longer. And when I made the decision, it was almost like my life flashed before my eyes, but I was able to see in the last couple of years how many times I've held myself back, hiding behind that brand.
Yeah, because your name is
And
so strong. Leah Steele, like it's a strong name.
yeah. So here I am. Yeah. And I've like, you know, and I think also like the way that I'm doing business is also really shifting and changing. And,
Mhm.
you know, I'm really being called to help people start to reframe how they're looking at wealth. And so I'm really stepping into, like, my brand is really evolving from this, like, you know, the wealth witch to more of an evolutionary wealth focus where, you know, I'm really starting to work with my clients on reframing the way they look at money, wealth, and currency from, you know, a financial perspective, from a currency perspective, whether that's fiat or digital, like shifting from money and wealth being a like currency to a resource, to looking at wealth as a resource. And that's really what I believe. Like, I believe that's the evolution of wealth. And you know, the other thing that I've just had a lot of realization, I've made and lost millions of dollars multiple times. Like, making money is not a problem for me. Creating sustainable generational wealth is my work to do here. And it's literally all up in my gene keys too. So it's like, that is my work to do here. And I learn best by teaching. I've got that 5 line, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's important for me to be teaching as I'm learning. And so this next 9-year cycle for me is about really tapping into the evolution of wealth and staying in a place where I'm able to look at what's happening on, you know, on the global stage, financial stage, from a place of fluidity, so that I can pivot, so that I can evolve, and to help my clients do that as well, but while building generational wealth and sustainable generational wealth. And that's really the path that I'm on. And it's a big focus for me over the next 12 months. But, you know, I know that's what the next 9 years for me is going to be dedicated to. Me doing that and me helping my clients to do that as well.
So with that being said, I remember years ago when you first talked about what wealth meant to you, when you were like, wealth meant being well and healthy. And a lot of people don't look at wealth like that. They just automatically mean it's money, 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 but it's so much more than that. We see people who have a lot of money, they're unhealthy, they're unhappy, and they're not really prosperous. Like all it takes is one thing to come through and their whole entire empire would crumble. And you created this revolutionary program, Ouroboros, because is Ouroboros. So I know a lot of people don't know what Ouroboros is. And if you like to talk about Ouroboros, and really is Ouroboros evolving too, since Leah Steele has evolved, and what does that look like now?
Yeah. So yeah, Ouroboros is my signature wealth repatterning program, and it looks at wealth, simultaneously it looks at wealth from a holistic perspective, right? And so the Ouroboros is the ultimate symbol of regeneration, essentially. It's an ancient symbol of alchemy that represents the life, death, and rebirth cycle. And it's the snake that eats its tail, or the dragon that eats its tail, right? And that's constantly in a cycle of regeneration. And you know, I really believe that, like, for me, that work has been so important, because we're living in a culture, and not even a culture, a collective, because this really is a global thing. Like, obviously it looks a little bit different depending on the country that you're in, and we're Americans. And so, you know, it's certainly, you know, from the perspective of America, if we're just talking about America, you know, we are raised to be compliant commodities. You know, from the time we take our first breath on this planet, we are leveraged by our government. Our birth certificate actually, you know, acts as a vehicle for trade and financial gain for our government. And we are programmed and conditioned to you know, fit inside that American dream and, you know, go to school, get indoctrinated, go to university, get credit cards, start worrying about your credit score, start paying interest to financial institutions, get student loans so that you can get a degree, so that you can go work 40 hours. You know, it's like we're slaves, essentially. Like we are slaves to a financial system and structure that doesn't serve our highest and best good. And that there is some degree of that every town, planet Earth, right? And so this work in Ouroboros was so important because what it enables us to do is deconstruct that programming and conditioning so that we can actually begin to step into reclaiming our sovereignty and deciding what we want our life to look like. And right now, because, you know, the nature of the global financial agenda is that we have to play inside of it right now. Very few people have officially like exited the grid completely, right? But for me, it's been important to teach people how to play inside that game by their rules, not by, you know, but play by our own rules instead of the rules of the global financial agenda or the global financial elite. And so, yeah, we're just getting ready to start the 6th round of this program. It will be the final round as it currently exists. It'll be the last time that Ouroboros is run the way that it's being run right now because it is evolving. And, you know, one of the things that was very, very clear to me this round of Ouroboros was that the spiritual community in particular, you know, tends to like just stay stuck in perpetual processing. And we just don't go out and like actualize our desires. And so what I recognized is, you know, that we've just become caught in this, we've become caught in the Ouroboros. Like we're caught in this continual cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, but we're not actually out there. We're not exiting the Ouroboros and going out into life and living life. And if you noticed in the graphics this round, I didn't have the Ouroboros. I actually had a snake that was not in the circle.
You did.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that to me just really represents that, like, this is the round where we break out. It's that one willful action towards actualization of the life that we deeply desire. And so, yeah, so Ouroboros is evolving. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I have a little bit of an idea what's coming, but I'm sort of allowing that to drop in. I am really stepping back into spiritual entrepreneur mentorship. Especially over the next 12 months. I really believe that right now it's very, very important that the change makers and the people that are here to help the collective through this next phase of our evolution in humanity actually become very well educated on what's going to be coming and what's happening with this evolution of wealth. And I just am seeing so many people in the online space that are creating lives like I've created, which is like, you know, making lots and lots of money, but not really creating a sustainable plan for their future. And I really want to change that. I really want to make a big impact in the next 12 months and help my peers and my community shift those perspectives and start to look at business from more of a business perspective. And yeah, so that really is my focus. I'm going to be doing a lot of high level mentorship and masterminding. And of course there'll be some wealth building stuff in there along the way that are kind of like one-off things, but I was doing a lot of that. And then I pulled back for the last few years to really focus on the wealth work. And now I'm evolving again. So,
and I wanted, it just came into my mind. You know how we work. I was just thinking, especially in the online coaching space. And I kind of got caught up into this whole situation for a little bit, because I know me and I know how you work because I resonate with it. Is this whole like, oh my God, just sit on the mountain, kumbaya, manifest this money, it's gonna come. You don't really have to do any hard work. And I'm like, when I sat back and I got out of that little like thinking like it's all gonna just come to me. I just need to get up here. I need to fix my energy and everything. And I was just like, Amber, you're a hustler. Like that's one thing about me. And things when I take action and everything aligns, it aligns in my being, things start to come my way. It's always been like that in my entire life. Like the more I did this work and my gifts started to come back online, then I saw like, oh, that's really what I was doing. But when I think of you really do tell your clients, or when you talk to us, like you really have to bust your butt. A lot of the people in this online coaching world, which I see now is crumbling, they have just been telling women like, just pour your champagne, let's just sit back and, you don't really have to work hard. And I see so many women really fall into this trap of like, oh, something's wrong with me because it's just not working like this. And this is where I really want to dive into human design, because the more I dive, and I know you've been living the design for 10 years. I've been living the design for like 7 years now. And there's like that Gates 26, that's that trickster, the shadow part of it, where, people are really good at this, selling you this dream. And I'm just starting to see that the infrastructures of all of it is just really kind of crumbling, because it's like you keep telling people that all you need to do is this and that, and you'll just manifest this life, but you really have to do the work. And like you said, with the Ouroboros, it's like people are just stuck in this processing and they're not getting out of this loop, and they're not really doing the work. Like people are saying they're doing the work, but I'll be honest, like the more I'm into doing the work that I know I'm personally doing and really getting down there and busting my ass, I'm like, people are not doing the work. It's just fluff. And I just really want to just kind of like talk about, like, as far as me and you were talking about this before we even got on the call, about human design. And you're a projector, I'm a projector. Wait, you're a 5/1 projector, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were born, but we were talking about what was it that you were telling me, the 13 sign? And I am a 4/6 emotional projector. And I think, are you a splenic?
Yeah.
Okay. And so we were talking about before that you have a modality and your new life's work that's coming online. And I really want us to just kind of like talk about human design if people are not aware of it. It's so trendy right now, but people are teaching it so general. They're not really diving in there, like how you and I talk about it, and the fact that you have that background of the astrology, the esoteric knowledge, even I have that background. That's my life's work of science and esoteric knowledge. That's how I really got into the science. I've always been into astronomy and engineering and all those things. So I really want to talk about this because and your cousin, who's also my friend, Alicia, we talk about this all the time with human design, and how really I feel like people are getting the fluff of it. And they're not really getting how much I call it a visual science it is, and how you could just really step into like super just decoding, not even decode. I don't even want to use the word decoding. What is the word I want to use? Really step deeply into your work if you use it use it appropriately, like you. And what do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, I want to just speak to like the first thing that you were talking a little bit about, because, this is actually why I'm stepping back into business mentorship. Mm-hmm. And it's because, look, like, I'm just going to say it completely bluntly, like, all these people in the online space that are out there telling you can manifest your way to millions, it's bullshit. Like, you cannot do that. That's not a reality. Now, does shifting your mindset help change things in your external reality? Yes, absolutely. Because when you change your vibration and your frequency, you're able to actually show up in the world different. Like when you're not showing up from pure lack and scarcity, like, yes, things change, but those things aren't sustainable. And it's a real problem. Like, I feel like it's a real problem. All these coaches and all these, mindset people who are out there telling people that, just invest in my program because, if you give me this $5,000, I'm going to teach you how to mindset your way to millions. Like, that's dangerous. And that's, that's not the reality. Like,
Mhm.
yes, I believe that we have the ability to create any reality that we desire, but as a creator, and to create means that we have to action our
Yes.
creation, our ideas. Like, that's how we create. You don't just create by sitting back and, and I just think that really has to shift, and that has to change. And yeah, I mean, you don't make 7 figures easily. It's hard work. And only about 5% of people are actually going to be successful as entrepreneurs. That's just the reality of it. Like, 5% of people, right? So all those other people are just being sold a pipe dream. And so I think that there's a responsibility as, as coaches or as leaders or mentors in the online space, we have a responsibility to begin to start to qualify our clients better and weed out the people that we know aren't going to do the work, because we're just stealing from them otherwise. Because we know they're not going to do the work. So we know that they're not going to be able to actualize. So that's just my little tangent on that. But yes, I absolutely believe that if we all understood ourselves at a deeper level, we wouldn't have as many of these problems, right? And human design, gene keys, I mean, I'll give you just like, obviously, so gosh, I guess it's been about 10 weeks ago, I started downloading my, coming up on 3 months actually, what I believe is my legacy work, and it's called the Golden Codex. And it is heavily influenced by gene keys and human design. But so for me, my mom was throwing the I Ching from the time that I can remember. So I have always been exposed to the hexagrams.
Okay.
And in hindsight, looking back, like, I can see how everything that my mom did in her life centered around the hexagrams. And that, it is one of our most ancient spiritual technologies. And for those that don't know, the gates of human design and the keys of gene keys are just the hexagrams. They are interpretations of that ancient spiritual technology that is the I Ching. So that's the first thing. So this system, the Golden Codex, is heavily focused on the hexagrams. But I am also absolutely obsessed with Chinese 5-element theory, which is a 4,000+ year old body of wisdom and knowledge. And so the Golden Codex incorporates the hexagrams, their elemental associations, and then looks at the astrological placements of the individual. So what planets do you have? What planetary association, the hexagram planetary association, the astrological sign it's sitting in, and the house that it's sitting in. And all of that makes this really beautiful picture of who you came here to be. And I believe that these systems, whether it's human design or obviously, raw downloaded human design, and it's this incredible body of work that, as we both know, you could study your whole life and not, fully have realized all that is there in that system. I just think it fascinates me, and I'm obsessed with it. I love human design. So raw downloaded human design, right? And I really believe that when that system came through, that was what humanity needed at that time to start this process of remembrance. Like, I really truly believe that we incarnate on this planet at a specific time in a specific location for a reason. Like, it's not coincidence, right? It happens because coming here at that time activates an ability in us to have a deep remembrance of it's how we remember, right? Because as long as there have been humans on this planet, we have had ancient spiritual technology to help us remember who we are based on those systems. I mean, medicine used to be based on astrology, right? We used to be treated by medical doctors based on when we were born, what astrological sign we were born under. So as long as we've been around, we've had these systems, right? And they've evolved over time with what we've been able to receive. And so, obviously we're going through a huge evolution right now. Humanity is. and everything is changing. And so for me, when human design came, that was the system that the collective was able to receive. But obviously only very few were able to dive into it the way that you and I and Alicia and, people that are really living their experiment dive into it. It had to be, Ra was a 5-1, right? It had to be universalized for the masses. So he created an authority and a strategy. So it was like, oh, if you aren't going to dive into the whole system of human design, here's a small piece that if you begin implementing that in your life, you're going to be able to see change and you're going to start to have a remembrance of who you are. Right. So,
Yes.
And that was beautiful. And many, many people have been impacted by the system. It has helped the evolution of humanity. And then Richard Rudd comes along with Gene Keys. Right. And for me, the transmission of Gene Keys to me is just, from a scientific perspective, from a genome, from a, that whole, I mean, really, what is a genetic matrix? It's funny that that's that's one of the online systems that we use. But from that genetic matrix perspective, Richard Rudd's interpretations of the hexagrams are mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
So, that system comes online and people begin to start to explore that and start to have a deep remembrance of who they came to be in that. And for me, as this work, the Golden Codex, and I believe now we're at a time where there are a number of people that are ready to take a deeper dive and into what that means for them as the individual, because what these systems have done up until this point is, unless you have a willingness to dive deep, deep, deep into this stuff, it's very hard to put together a full picture for yourself. Right. So
true.
It takes a lot of study. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of dedication. Right. And I mean, you and I both, I know I am after 10 years, I'm still learning. I'm still blown away. And, I reread things and get something totally different than the first time that I read it. So, I feel and so the Golden Codex for me is something now that I think can become highly individual for people. And it's called the Golden Codex because of the golden ratio. And that portion of the Fibonacci sequence that exists in all things. And the Golden Codex, it's already in us, right? We just simply need to have the remembrance of it. So all of those codes, all of that information, it already exists inside us. We just have to have the remembrance. And I think that, there's a call right now to go back to, for me, especially inside the Golden Codex, to go back to the hexagrams. So to go back to the original technology that came through, and really dive into a deep understanding of that. And in that also to look at, and this kind of brings the Ouroboros thing full circle, but to look at, all of these ancient spiritual technologies are serpentine in nature. So the I Ching originally, the serpentine history and foundations of the I Ching is stuff that's been sort of erased, right? And if you look at all of our ancient civilizations, they all had these serpentine deities that they worshiped. And so I think we're at a place in the evolution of humanity where we have to have a remembrance of this, and it's been hidden from us. And so that's why the Golden Codex actually uses 13th sign sidereal astrology, because we have that sign of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, that's been hidden from us. And I happen to be born under Ophiuchus, so I really resonate deeply, with that astrological sign, which is really interesting combination of Scorpio and Sagittarius. And I'm a December 1 birthday. So within Ophiuchus, there's kind of a separation inside Ophiuchus of those that are born in November and those that are born in December. And those that are born in December are much more Sagittarius-like. And have, more of that thirst for wisdom and knowledge and travel and all of that Sagittarius has. But yeah, I mean, so it's definitely it's been a lot. And I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose most days because there's so much information that's coming in. But one of the beautiful things for me is really diving into the planetary associations of our hexagram placements. And so I think that's the next evolution of these systems and really understanding who we came here to be.
And I know I'm about to dive deeper into the hexagram now that you've like really, because it's like I just this year really dove into the gates. Like I always knew about the gates. Like for me, when it came to human design, a lot of mine is really basically self-study. I discovered human design. I was like, what the hell is this? What is a projector? I don't understand it. Like, what the heck did I just find? And then like a couple of years later, I woke up one day and I was like, human design. Like, and then I started looking at charts and I was just downloading, I could read them. And then I started going deeper in it. And actually a couple weeks ago, I don't know what happened. You know how this happens. I just had another download that I was able to read the chart in another way. And things were just coming at me. And then I was like, okay, it's time to dive in it again. And I was just like, and this, like you just said, the more it's just this visual science, this science, because science is always evolving. We're always learning more. And human design is very quantum. So it's like forever, ever, ever, ever. There's so much information to learn. It's like it's never ending. And I'm just, like you just said, a thirst, a water hose. Like that's how I feel. That's how I feel. And so I feel like sometimes when I get online and I have to really actually stop. I only like follow maybe 2 or 3 people who talk about it that I deeply resonate with. It was just so much online of people. And it was just too general for me. I'm like, this system is so, so deep. I was like, people are not even talking about personal Godheads. I've heard you talk about Godheads. I've heard Alicia talk about Godheads, because you know why? Because they really don't even have that esoteric basis to even talk about the Godheads, because they don't understand it. Because when you start getting into Ma'at, you start getting into Lakshmi, you start getting into Hades, you start getting to all those people, and you really haven't been doing the study, you're like, what am I doing? What am I really teaching? Because you're not really, you're just teaching authority and strategy, which are very important, but it's way deeper than that. You know, the fact that I learned that my own personal Godhead was Lakshmi and she was already my personal Godhead, I was like, okay, hold on now. I need to do a little bit more deeper discovery on what's going on here, because at the end of the day, like you said, if we start do this, everything comes together. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so much is like coming, and I'm just like, I need to know more. I need to know more. And I know these last couple of weeks, I actually kind of took myself offline and really was just, I felt the same way with as you, like this, a deeper transformation is happening in my life. I am really stepping deeper into my own work. Even this podcast is evolving, because at first it was like me talking about more of the work I was doing in the home, because that's where my spiritual gifts are. But then it's starting to get into the dragons and then the ley lines, the things that I've always been very, very curious about. And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to find out like, oh, these are the things the reason I'm curious about it, because these are the things that I came here to do.
Yeah.
And when you have people like when you cross paths with people like Leah Steele, and then she's kind of like, okay, I need you to go. She's calling you out on your stuff. And I'll just never forget, what was it, 2020, when I stepped into your Lionsgate activation, and I heard you speaking in light language, and I was like, I was like, what's going on here? Like, what is going on here? I was like, I've heard people speak in light language, and I was like, wait, what am I doing now? And you were like, you've got to step into your purpose work. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I got to do it. And I'll just never forget, 3 months later, my ancestors were like, we're not letting you go any further. We're not going to bring you anymore. We're not going to connect you anymore unless you really take this serious and dive deep, jump, trust. And you know what I did? I sat on my couch in December, and I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job. I'm just going to quit my job in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm just going to do this, and I'm just going to trust. And I'm here. I'm still going. It's a wild ass ride. It's been a wild ass ride, but I'm just like, I think what I'm trying to get here is like, I'm so grateful. And I tell you this all the time for people like you that come out of nowhere. Cause I literally came out of the nowhere in 2018. And I was like, who is this lady? And I always say this when people, my guides or my new teachers show up, like, who is this person? And where did you come from? And you really show us that you really got to do this work, like what's the point of, and I heard this the other day when they talk about purpose. The purpose of life is to live the life you came here to live, to have a big life, to be happy, to all these other things are just a byproduct of it. But if you're not really happy with what you're doing at the moment, what's the purpose? Like, I see so many people, they make a lot of money, they're doing this, but they really do hate what they do. And that really hurts my heart, because if only people really took that time to really do the self-discovery, and I know it's hard, but like you said, we have to do better at making sure that we're aligning with the right clients. And I deeply resonate that for me, because I was doing coaching and mentoring, and I have people and they're like, oh, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. And I'm like, nah, you don't really want to work with me, because we're doing all the things. We're going deep. And if you're not ready to go deep, like, you're not really ready to do it. And I don't really like to work with people who don't want to, that are not passionate like me. And I know I feel like I'm just like going on, but this was just coming out, and I really wanted to just talk about it because I'm just grateful for your work. I'm grateful for you continually doing the transformation within yourself, because that just activates people like me and your other clients that are coming in. And so I could go on all day, but I could go
Well,
on all
thank
day,
you.
but there's just so much. There's just so much going on right now. And I know last night we were talking about America and the Matrix. And one thing that I know you do is you channel a lot. And what do you see for us? And I think people really need to hear this right now. Like, how at the end you'll do in your lives, you'll say something very like super serious. And I know it's like coming through, like, what do people need to really hear right now? Because somebody who's listening to this needs to hear this to really step into their next level.
Yeah. I mean, I think like you actually touched on it earlier. I think that the most important thing that we can do right now is to have discernment with our actions, what we're investing in, who we're working with, what we're consuming, from all perspective, what we're eating, what we're putting into our physical vessel, but also what we're putting into our mind. I think like, I'll just use Alicia Baker because she's a mutual friend of ours. And, when you said like you stopped following all these people that were talking about human design because it was so generic and so general, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, for me, it's like, I don't follow anyone but Alicia when it comes to human design. Like, I follow you, I get your stuff, like, but there really isn't anyone else that I'm like, oh, this is somebody that I'll listen to. I'll listen to Alicia because, I mean, she's my cousin, but aside from that, like, that's not why, but it really is because, like, she is a forever student. Like, she is always learning. I know that she puts as much work into learning her area and learning human design as I do into studying and learning the things that I'm passionate about and the things that I'm teaching. And so like, I really think that this discernment piece is so important. If you're working with a mentor and you're working with a teacher and they're not learning and they're not learning and they're not continuing to study and they're not continuing to grow, if they're telling you that they've got that shit all figured out, run for the hills, right? Like, you should only be working with people who are still in it. You should only be working with people who are still learning and are still growing. Like, I don't want to work with any mentor that I think has it all figured out. I'm more attracted to mentors and guides that I see fail and pick themselves back up and keep going, right? Like, I'm not here for it. Like, again, like, this is a journey. Like, nobody has it all figured out, regardless of what their Instagram feed may show you, right? Like,
Yes.
Nobody has it all figured out. We all have challenges. That is the point of this lifetime. I want to learn from people who have continually had challenges that have knocked them down and they've gotten back up and they've had success on the other side of that. So I think that there's going to be a complete and total deconstruction of our financial systems and structures as we know it, right? Like the global economy is headed for a recession. We're going to see a financial collapse. That is coming 100%. And if you don't believe me, literally just go look at all the actions of all the wealthy across the world and what they're doing, the bunkers that they're building, and all of the things that they're actually doing right now. I think that's, it's like, it's coming. And so what we need to do to be prepared, I think, is begin to shift our perspective, what I was talking about earlier, really begin to embrace evolutionary wealth and look at wealth not as currency, but as a resource. Like every single one of us is resourced in so many incredible ways that we don't even recognize or realize, right? And so it's really beginning to look at ourselves like, look at our value, look at our inherent value. Like, what do we have that's valued? Every single thing that you've been through, every single hard time, every single obstacle, every single thing that, you feel like almost took you out, that you overcame, makes you extremely valuable. And it is a resource that you have to help others. So I think it's really important that we look at our inherent value, that we begin to really look at how resourced we are, and not just look at resources as financial in nature, because we are getting ready to enter into a phase of humanity where, we're going to have some periods of, exchange isn't going to be happening by some kind of currency, right? We're going to go back to some trade and barter systems in lots of areas, I believe. And so to, start to take account of where you are resourced and how you can be better resourced. Again, not financially, but how can you be better resourced? And then to really have discernment with what we're consuming. Like, those are the things that I think, like, for me, are like the most important. And I also, I like what you said, because this has been a big thing for me this year. Like, I've had my ass handed to me this year. I know you have too. Like, it's just been, this year's been so rough, but I think it always happens. Like, I feel like it always happens for me when the collective's getting ready to go through something big. It seems like I go through it 12 to 24 months before, because I need to be prepared to help walk people through it. And so, this year's been really rough for me. And I, my health has really suffered as a result, and I haven't been that happy, and I think that one of the things that you said earlier, like, we're here on this planet and in this journey to find happiness. And so I really think that humanity needs to get back to prioritizing happiness, because I think a lot of us don't even know what makes us happy. So
yes. I meet people all the time. They don't even think that's possible. I think that they think that you're supposed to have a job. You just work 30 years. It's going to be, of course, it's going to be hard, but you're not supposed to be happy. You're just supposed to, it's so many things I could go on that I hear people say all the time, and they really are not risk takers. That's one thing that I know for myself, that I've been a serious risk taker all my life as an entrepreneur. And I'm like, what? I've always been like, what do I need to give up to get to what I need to get to? And what is the level of risk I'm willing to take to do it? And actually, that's something in my human design chart that I have that says that I am willing to take huge risks. And so I can't wait to see what's going to happen. And I really resonate with the fact that you said that it's happening to us before, so we can prepare to really help the collective step into this new, like I like to say, this new paradigm. And as us both being projectors, like Rod talked about, we're the ones who are here that are laying the grid work for the new earth. So it's very important that we kind of like go through that lay of the land and prepare everybody, because one thing that I see for us both is we have a new wave of people that are going to be coming in to work with us, who are actually really ready to do the work. They've been watching us. I know people always are probably coming to you like, Leah, I'm going to come work with you. I am, da, 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 da. I know people probably just like, and you're just like, okay, yeah, whatever, but there's a new wave of people that are coming in. And that's why we have to go through our entire transformation. And we're just like, is this really happening right now? And it's just a beautiful thing. And I am excited that I get to experience it with you, and I get to learn from you. And I am excited to work with you again in the future, and even have you back on as a guest again, and we could talk about just what else is coming up. Because, I know you like to talk about, being that America is going through their Pluto return right now, and all the funky, funny stuff we have going on in America. I know you get to watch it online, but I'm over here experiencing it, and it's ugly. It's really quite ugly. And we can get on another episode in the future and really kind of like talk back and sit and laugh, and maybe we can clink some champagne, because it's like we told you guys that this was coming. So are you guys ready to do the work?
Exactly.
Yes. So I wanted to I'm gonna go ahead and we're getting to the end, but I want to let everybody know. I can't even talk. I want you to let everybody know how they can work with you, where to find you, all the things Leah. How do they
Yeah.
get all the things Leah?
Yeah, I'm the Leah Steele on all the social media. So that's the easiest way to find me, I think. And I have a Facebook group called Revolutionary Wealth. That's a great place that, there's lots and lots of free resources in there. And then my podcast, which is currently called the Wealth Witch Podcast, but on my birthday is going to be rebranded as the Evolutionary Wealth Podcast with Leah Steele. So yeah, but the Wealth Witch Podcast, I don't know when this is releasing. So my birthday is not till December. So one of those two names you can search and find the podcast.
And maybe I haven't decided when we're going to release this, because this is 2 years of my podcast, and I'm doing some rebranding. So I was thinking, well, I won't even give too much to it, guys, but we'll just see. I'm really kind of like figuring it out, because with this entire interview, we had to figure out and let the stars really kind of align for us to have this conversation. And I am grateful that you're here. And I just want to thank everybody who's listening, and we will see you on the next episode. But thank you, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. This was fun.